Welcome to the Science of Fishing, where we deliver the latest reports and most up-to-date tactics to help you catch more fish. Each episode, we'll get into what's biting and break down exactly what you need to do to get out there and catch them up. Special thanks to Black Reef Spearfishing for sponsoring this podcast. Now, here's your host, Mark Farag.
What's going on, everybody? I'm here with Captain John McMurray from One More Cash Charters out of Oceanside, New York. Cap, thanks for taking the time today. It's a pleasure to have you here. You're a legend up there in New York. You're killing it always. You're the jigging and popping expert, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. I appreciate the good words.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm always seeing you all around there over at the AP and just doing your thing. I know you guys got a good fleet, and you guys are always out doing everybody. So, yeah. Kat, how has it been this off season? How you doing lately?
We're getting through it. I keep pretty busy during the off season. Having all those boats, there's always at least one big project to take care of over the winter, and they all need regular maintenance and they all need fixing. I also have other work that I do over the winter. I have some writing contracts here and there, but I stay pretty busy. But it ain't fishing, man, and I'm looking forward to getting out again. I start to go a little cabin crazy at this point of the year.
I bet. Yeah, everybody's always got the itch. I'm down in Florida right now, so trying to get out there.
Man.
But when I'm up by you, I get the tuna fever every time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's a terrible addiction,
I know.
Actually, it's like, honestly, it's like, when you do it every day or every day that you got the weather to do it, you have those adrenaline spikes every day, or at least, you have the anticipation that something cool can happen. And then, in the winter, that's abruptly taken away. Usually around December, you do your last trip and you kind of think you're going to get one or two more in, and then you don't. And then it's a long winter, man. It's like you get addicted to those moments. And when you don't have them, it's almost like PTSD, you come back and you're like, holy crap, what do I do with myself now? And you got all this downtime. Winter's tough, man, but we all get through it, right?
Absolutely. You guys are getting hit with some snow up there right now, right?
No. It's been pretty mild winter, actually.
Hasn't been bad.
We got a little bit of snow yesterday, but it melted off real quick.
Oh, that's good. Good. Well, for those that don't know, what's your season run like? What months are you going from to from?
Well, it depends on if you're just talking about tuna. Well, I guess let's talk about the whole season. I generally start dropping the boats back in the water that second week of March.
Soon.
If we get a mild winter, which we had this winter, you'll start seeing peppers over in Raritan Bay towards that later part of March, and then it really starts to go good in April. And then Jamaica Bay over on the other side starts to light up mid to late April. And it's, then it's 24/7 from there, man. The tuna thing is interesting because, it's a little bit different every year. It seems to be happening a little earlier. And our bluefin fishery, it really starts to go off earlier than it has been, mid to late May now. Whereas, if this was a few years ago, I would have told you mid-June. But it's a little different every year. You don't really know when they're going to be there. I start poking around and looking late May, mid-May. And some years we're the first ones to get on them. Some years we're not. But we definitely start looking around. It's always good to be the guy that gets the first one,
Of course. You think the conservation effort that's been happening has been allowing them to come up earlier and earlier? Or do you think it's just migration?
I think when you look at bluefin in particular, I mean, yellowfin is a wild card. They're very short-lived, fast-growing species, and some years they come, some years they don't. Some years there's a shit ton around, some years there's only a few around. And there's no real, it's hard to overfish. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's hard to overfish something like yellowfin because they're such a fast growing, short lived species. Bluefin, on the other hand, as you likely know, was the poster child for overfishing. You had that big sushi boom. All of a sudden, guys were getting 20, 30, $40 a pound for bluefin. That was a long time ago. They're not getting near that now. But it really did tank the stock. It was a big Japanese market. A lot of money was being made on those fish, and we really knocked the crap out of them. But I think not only nationally but internationally, they kind of figured out that they had to really start managing these things right. And if you look at the stock size chart, you'll see a definitive upturn since I think around 2008, 2009, that chart starts going up and up and up. And without a doubt, both the Eastern and Western Atlantic stocks of bluefin have been on the increase for about a decade now. And not only are we seeing more fish, but we're seeing more of a age and size distribution. Like we're seeing a lot of small ones during certain times of the year, and during certain times of the year, we're starting to see big ones. So it's not 1 or 2 year classes like some other fisheries. It's pretty well distributed. Now, I will say this: while it hasn't been terrible on the bluefin front, it hasn't been as good as it was the last 2 years. We've kind of had a very short, abbreviated run in the spring, from late May to mid-June, and then they shoot up north. And they had real good fishing in the Cape this year on those recreational size fish, those fish that were just a bit under 70 inches. Those were our fish. I mean, we'd had those fish for over a decade here. But I don't think that's an indication of stock size. I think they just kind of shot up there for one reason or another. I also think it's related to the yellowfin fishery, and I'll give you my reasons why. And before I do, I should say this is all anecdotal. There's no real science. I'm just making on water assumptions here. But I used to think, because a traditional season, we'd have bluefin all the way through, mid to late July. Good bluefin fishing. And then you get 1 or 2 yellowfin while you were fishing for bluefin, and then you wouldn't see any more bluefin at all after that. Like they would just disappear, and you'd see them again in December or November. What I think is happening, I used to think that was water temperature related, like most reasonable people will. And it usually seemed to happen around 75, 76 degrees that we wouldn't see any bluefin anymore. But then one year we didn't have any yellowfin at all. I think that was 2016, 2017. And I'm sorry, we didn't have any yellowfin at all. And then we had bluefin consistently from late May all the way through September. So I think what happens is the yellowfin show up and kind of push the bluefin out. There's too much competition for the bluefin. So they're like, all right, we're out of here. We're going to go up north where the water's cooler and we don't deal with these yellowfin. Is that really what happens? I don't know. But it does seem to be that once the yellowfin move in, the bluefin are gone. And we had the yellowfin move in early July last year, and that may well have just pushed the bluefin out.
Yeah. I remember I was up there fishing the AP, and the yellowfin were everywhere, and then there wasn't really a bluefin bite anymore.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of word, or in the past couple of years, about the bluefin showing up right out of the Raritan Bay over there. People like to say they're in front of the Statue of Liberty, but have you went over and fished right there off of Brooklyn and off of Long Island for them?
Yeah, so the spring and the fall I fished there a lot. I've heard from reliable people who've seen bluefin air out over in Raritan Bay. So I do kind of believe it. I think the Statue of Liberty thing is funny because that showed up. What was that? The New York Post or Daily News?
Something like
the
that.
Guy holding the tuna in front of the Statue of Liberty. When that piece came out, I got a ton of calls like, "Oh, we want to catch tuna in New York Harbor." I'm like, "Nah, dude, doesn't work that way." But there's absolutely a bluefin bite, kind of within that 10-mile range of lower New York Harbor.
Right.
It's mostly people call it Rockaway Reef or Ambrose Reef, or I'm sorry, Rockaway Canyon or Ambrose Canyon.
Yep.
But it's not really. It's almost 100% a bait fishery, and the question remains in my mind. Have those fish always been there, or is this a recent occurrence? I tend to think that they have always been here because there's so many reports, and I've seen them too. You see them rip through the bunker schools,
Yeah.
from June on, and maybe one or two guys will hook one throwing topwater plugs, but very rarely does someone actually land one. It was only 2 years ago that people really started, going out with 80 wides and 130s and fishing bait, fishing
Yeah.
live bluefish, live bunker. And that's when people started to really put some numbers in the boats. I should be clear that, you're not supposed to be, usually the recreational trophy category is closed by the time those fish show up. So people aren't technically supposed to be fishing for them unless they have an HMS charter party permit with the commercial endorsement and a landings permit. And then there are certain days that you can keep them and certain days you can't keep them. So it's a pretty highly regulated fishery. I know some guys got in real trouble last year for prosecuting it without the right permits and on the wrong days. But it's a pretty cool thing to do. It's not really my niche. I'm a jig and pop guy, and I don't really have the attention span to sit there and put a bait out and just wait. And pretty much that's how it is. There's a fleet of 100 boats out there, and you go out and you drop a bait in on some balloons, and you just kind of wait for a bite. Some days you're out there 10, 12 hours, you don't get a bite. Some days, as soon as the first time I did it, I couldn't get offshore because we had bad weather. And as I was putting the bait out, I was maybe 25 feet away from the boat and it got smashed. And I'm like, man, why the hell am I not doing this more? And the next 2 days I went out and sat there all day and didn't get a bite. So it's kind of like playing the lottery, but they're all big fish, they're all, mostly in that 80-inch range. There's some unders, but they're definitely the exception, not the rule. Plenty of fish in that 100-inch category. So it's pretty neat that they're right here.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. They're in that shallow water and that close. You think
Yeah.
they're chasing the bunker and the bluefish, right? More so than anything.
I think 100% they're chasing those bunker, and every one that we killed, we didn't get any last year doing that. I think I only went 2 or 3 times, but the year before we went several times. Everyone we killed was absolutely packed with bunker. I mean, one of them had 28 bunker in it because we counted them.
28.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
nuts.
the bunker, like there's a whole ecosystem around those bunker. I think, the fact that the bunker have been so prolific has really added a lot to my business, but to lower New York Harbor in general. Like the whales that are around right now, and you got the bluefin in close. There's sharks everywhere, dude. I mean, the shark thing is kind of really prohibited doing that live line, and for bluefin last year, you couldn't get a bait in the water without it getting sharked almost right away. But the bunker added so much life here.
So the sharks have become a problem up there, huh?
The sharks are, yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that sandbars and duskies are in real trouble, and technically they are, but they're just, to me, I mean, it seems like there's so many around.
Yeah. They're more so of a nuisance to you, especially.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, you're more
even offshore. Offshore they're there too. They're everywhere.
No, absolutely. Yeah. We've ran into them out there and they become annoying sometimes, especially when you got a nice
100%.
yellowfin on.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you were saying, you're more of a jig and pop guy. Can you tell us a little bit more about why? Why not trolling? Why not, the using butterfish and dropping down some butterfish? What's up with the jig and pop for you?
Well, I mean, I guess to put it very simply, I have very short attention span. I can't bear to troll. I just don't. First of all, I suck at it. I've done it a few times, and I'm absolutely terrible at it. And I want to move every 5 minutes, and everything gets tangled. So that's the first reason. The second reason, I started this business as a light tackle business. It was based around throwing plugs for stripers.
Yeah.
All light spin gear. And I got an offshore boat because we had I would say kind of an inshore run of small bluefin back in 2005. Well, we were throwing flies to them. We were throwing plugs at them. They're all 20, 30, 40 pound fish. And I kind of got addicted to that sort of thing because seeing, a bluefin smash a plug is like epic. It's like
Oh
somebody
yeah.
drops a piano in or even a small one, and the line that comes off the reel. So I bought a bunch of offshore gear after those fish left, and I tried trolling a couple of times, and I absolutely hated it. And I remember once when I was trying to get weeds off a line or undo a tangle, I was marking fish, and we dropped a jig down, and bang, we hooked up right away, and just got entirely dumped. And it was, to me, the coolest thing in the world. And that was really like, I may have tried trolling once again after that, just because all the cool kids were doing it. But that was kind of the turning point for me. I'm like, I had all this trolling gear. I'm like, I didn't even bring it along anymore, and I started just running jig and pop trips. So yeah, I mean, I guess people think I'm a snob, or I look down on trolling. I certainly don't. I just it's not my thing. I can't. I physically can't do it. Like, my brain doesn't work that way. And if I'm not finding life, or I'm not getting a bite in 30 minutes, I got to go, man. I got to go look somewhere else. I got to go find some
Really?
more life. I can't just sit there and pull stuff behind the boat. That's
Yeah.
why I have no hair. I pull all my hair out.
Yeah, you're always looking for birds, whales, right? All over the place.
Yeah, man. Birds, whales, dolphin, shearwaters, tuna chicks, rays are another big one. I'm looking for rays, and marks. It's slicks. Slicks are another one. A lot of people don't bother with slicks, but you always want to stop on a slick because, a lot of times they've been day savers.
Right, right. Well, most of your boats now, they all jig and pop, right? You have what, 3 boats in your fleet?
I have 3 offshore boats, and
Yeah.
two inshore boats. But yeah, we're all jig and pop. I know Darren trolled a couple of times last year, and everybody gave him a real hard time for it. So I don't prevent those guys to do whatever they want. But the truth is, people book us to do jig and pop stuff. They don't book us to
Yeah,
troll. If they want to troll, they go with somebody else. So we really don't do much, if any, of it.
right, right. What's what'd you say is the most exciting fish you got on the jig and pop?
Um, well, I mean, gosh, last year we had a lot of fish in the mid 70-inch range on poppers, right? Uh, you know, Kind of in that 30 fathom area between Bacardi and Coimbra, and those were all like really good fish on poppers. Yeah, I kind of feel like anything over that size is prohibitive. Yeah, yes, you can land them, but it's really uh, it's not fun. I mean, they say for the first 30 minutes you're scared you're going to lose it, and then the next 30 minutes you're scared you're not going to lose it, because it really does suck. I mean, every fish does pretty much the same thing. They go for 2, 3, 4 runs horizontally, and then you're vertical for the next hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes to bring them up, and it's no fun. It's like your body's in kind of a weird bad position, and it's great when you land that fish because the whole boat takes part in bringing it in. Unless you're a crazy nutcase, you're passing that rod off to your buddy after 20 minutes or so. And
Yeah.
I always break people's balls when they do that. I'm like, ah, you pussy. But then when I get on the rod, I'm like, oh man, this sucks, somebody take it. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, those are real good fish last year. I think every year we're kind of getting cracks at bigger fish like that on jig and pop stuff.
Right.
Uh,
Does
we we
anybody
had a few. We had a couple big eye last year too. That was pretty awesome.
That's
That
pretty
was
cool.
that was farther out than usually. Yeah, yeah.
Sweet. Do any of those fish stand out to you though? Any of them? I remember hearing something about your son getting on a nice fish or something like that last season.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, seeing these kids get on fish and how stoked they get, that definitely burns a memory in my mind. I know it burns one in theirs too. Yeah, my kid had one of those giants off of Rockaway 2 years ago, and him and his buddies were with me, and like, I don't know, they thought I was like cool for a few minutes again. Now they think I'm a jerk off, but that was pretty damn fun. We sailed last year, so we do bro trips every other Sunday. And I take my kid and whoever he wants to bring, and maybe some of my friends. Last year we went out and it was really crappy weather. It rained like you wouldn't believe, and we got on a pot of dolphin, and first cast, my kid hooks up, sets the hook perfectly, and it ended up being the only fish of the day. And he rubbed it in for a long time, but that was pretty awesome. I was pretty stoked on that. And yeah, I mean, he's caught a lot of bluefin, a lot of yellowfin, real good striper fisherman, really good wrestler.
There you go.
Yeah,
He wrestles.
yeah.
That's sweet.
He lost. Yeah, man. This is his second year, and he's really good, and he's getting better. I really enjoy watching him. It's pretty
That's
awesome.
awesome. Yeah. No, I wrestled in
Yeah,
high school. I remember it's a good time. It's fun.
yeah, man. Best sport in the world, right?
Yes, sir. Rolling around with other
I
dudes,
mean, if
best thing
nothing
ever.
else, 100%. If nothing else, it teaches you how not to be a pussy, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
You gotta bare
yeah,
knuckle it. But
yeah, man.
so
Hardest sport in the world, but also the most rewarding. Anyway, go ahead.
absolutely. No, yeah. So that's awesome though. I bet he rubbed it in for a little while. He thought he was cooler than you for a bit. You there, Cap?
Definitely going to be a better wrestler than I was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Question for you. What drew you to tuna? Like how did you start fishing and what got you into like going out there to
Yeah.
chase the tuna?
So I mentioned it briefly. There was a really good year class that came out of the Gulf. The Western Atlantic stock spawns in the Gulf of Mexico. So because of recruitment overfishing, I mentioned that before. The bluefin, kind of tanked for a while because we were, harvesting them before they could reproduce. But once we stopped doing that, all of a sudden, boom, boom, we had two really good year classes in 2003 and 2004. And as those fish move up the coast, they were juvies, or 20, 30 pound fish. We had access to them like 6, 7 miles off the beach. And, we were catching them on light spin gear. I'm like, man, this is freaking awesome. Like, it's going to be hard to go back to stripers and bluefish after this. And so, I kind of got the bug then, and I became a junkie. I bought a 25-foot contender that I really couldn't afford. And we started making those 20 and 30 mile runs, kind of chasing that same size class as it moved on year after year. I think 2009 is when we really started to get like fish in the 80-pound range. And they were mostly on jigs too. What we do is we go out and look for that life and look for marks and bait. I didn't really start doing the topwater stuff until I had the guys from Centaur out. These guys, I guess they're Chinese. I don't know. Anyway,
Not sure.
yeah, or Taiwanese, I think maybe. Anyway, they didn't speak much English, but they were very, very good fishermen, and we kind of stopped on some life. And I wasn't marking anything. It was just some whales, dolphins, birds, and we fished it for a little while. And I'm like, all right, me with my ADHD, I was like, come on, man, let's move, let's go find something else. And they're like, no, stay. And they were throwing stick baits, and you look at us. That was my first real exposure to stick baits, and you look at them, and it's like a cigar shaped thing. The ones they were using were sinking. And I'm like, man, these things there's no action to them at all. But the way these guys are working them is they were throwing them out and taking in the slack and just pulling very slow, almost counterintuitively slow. And I kind of came from that false albacore school tuna background where you rip it as fast as you can through the school to get a bite. So I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm like, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not going to get bit. And 20 minutes into it, I got no marks at all, no signs of tuna, just like bang, bang, we double up on these stick baits. It's like somebody drops a piano over here, somebody drops a piano over there, and these things are just, pulling out line. So, what I learned from that is there's a proper way to use stick baits, and they do work. And by the way, you do that sweep, And then as you're taking the slack, it kind of floats up. The floating ones float up and they kind of bob on the surface. Almost every single strike we get on a stick bait is when it's just bobbing on the surface. So they're
Really?
very visual, very, very violent strikes. But, now what I do is when I find that kind of life, even if I'm not marking, I'm like, we're stopping here. We're going to work this area for an hour at least, and we're just going to blind cast. And we get a lot of fish doing that, man. And anyway, that's how I kind of morphed into doing the topwater thing. Now, later on, that was my introduction to stick baits. But later on in that same season, once we got into the afternoons, the way the weather pattern was that year is it would slick off in the afternoons. It would totally glass off. And you would start to see these schools of pushing fish. And you would get up on them and get in front of them and throw everything at them, stick baits included, and they wouldn't touch anything. You'd see them, they'd swim under the boat and they'd part, and there'd be a couple dozen of them, and they're all in the 100-pound class. So, in an act of desperation, we started throwing poppers at them, big poppers. And we ended up, we didn't catch a lot of them doing that, but we did start catching fish doing that. It was interesting. It would turn around 2 or 3 o'clock. All of a sudden, these fish, for some inexplicable reason, would start crushing these poppers. I don't even think they're trying to eat them. I think, you just find that aggressive fish in the school and it's going to hit it at a pier like a reaction strike. So we start fishing poppers pretty hard. Now, the problem with using both stick baits and poppers for a lot of the season is you get so many shearwaters that it becomes impossible. And that's when you're sinking stick baits and your Ronzis start to work better, just because they're the only things you can throw.
Right.
Shearwaters are brutal, man.
Really?
Those shearwaters, you throw a Ronzi into them, they'll dive 30 feet down and grab it.
Wow. Yeah. You ever, when you guys are jigging and popping, you ever like dead stick a Ronzi or anything and get a bite on that?
100%. So when we're jigging, I always have at least one Ronzi dead stick. Yeah. Now, if usually, I get a crew on the boat, there's usually 1 or 2 guys maybe that aren't great fishermen and that can't jig all day or throw a popper all day. They're the guys that get the Ronzi. Yeah. I mean, those things were developed to be dead stick. That's what they were made for, commercial striped bass fishermen, and just put in the rod holders and catch fish that way. They have enough action just with the way the boat moves. I mean, they're an extraordinary bait. Yeah, you could work them. I mean, you almost, again, you have to work them super slow for them to work right.
Yeah, they mimic an eel, right? Pretty much.
They do. They look like a sand eel. If you ever see a sand eel swim, they kind of do the same thing. And it's crazy because there's probably a dozen different knockoffs, but none of them work like the Ronzi. None of them have that same action.
What do you think is the biggest development over your years of fishing for these tuna? Is it the Ronzi? Is it the poppers? Is it the jigs? What do you think has been the biggest step forward in tuna fishing?
I think the biggest step forward has been the rods. Honestly, you need to have a rod that's around 8 foot that could throw a 3 or 4 ounce plug super far, super fast. So it's got to have a soft tip. You can't do that with an 80 wide with roller guides. You just or even a stiff rod. You just can't do it. So, I mean, there's plenty of rods, like all the surf rods, that can do that, but there's not many rods that have the backbone to beat a 200-pound fish. And that technology has come so far. And the reels too, like, I remember we used to use the Van Stalls, they were the only real durable reel. But now you could get like these Daiwa Saltigas that have over 60 pounds of drag. I mean, why? You don't want to put 60 pounds of drag on a fish. It'll pull your arm sockets out and it'll break the rod. But the amount of drag on these spinning reels is insane, and they're smooth too. At 40 pounds of drag, they're super smooth. Van Stalls are great reels, but when you got 40 pounds of drag, they're not smooth. So that's been the biggest development. I also think that Mad Manus white frostbite popper. I don't know what it is about that thing, man.
Everybody has one.
That has been, and I can't tell if it works so well because we all just have so much faith in it. But I do think, like, when you got 3 guys throwing poppers and it always seems to be the one that gets hit before any other one. It's nuts. And I also, when we're talking about jigs, I think those nomad streaker jigs really kind of added to the jigging thing. I mean, those things, for some reason or another, I mean, like, you try everything you got in the box, and there's a handful of things that you just have confidence in and that work. And that, the streakers, especially that pink glow one, they're like a game changer. They're just like, they outfish everything else.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. You're giving everybody your secrets right now, Cap.
No, I don't care, man. It's all good. I want other people to catch fish.
No, I love that. I love that. You're always been a giving person, from what I've heard from around the community and everything. And you're a conservationist too, right? Can you tell us? I know you've played a bunch of various roles in different organizations trying to preserve the fisheries and various nonprofits. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit
Now,
about that?
absolutely. And let me be clear about why I'm a conservationist. I mean, I don't even like that word, conservationist, but I guess it is, it does describe, my interest. And really, it's self-serving. I want there to be enough fish in the water to where I have an opportunity to go out and torture and kill them, or just torture and release them. But the truth is that, having the opportunity to stick those fish is way more important than how many I can throw in the cooler. Especially with something like bluefin, you really only need one. And yellowfin, you really only need 5. I kind of cap it at 7 because it's just too much.
Yeah.
So that's where my motivation lies. So for 9 years, I sat on the Mid-Atlantic Council on behalf of the governor of New York, and they manage federal fisheries. I was the chair of the HMS committee. That's a highly migratory species committee. And they manage a lot of other stuff like summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass. So I did that for 3 terms, 9 years. And then I was the legislative proxy on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. Now, they manage state fisheries inside of 3 miles, particularly striped bass, which is very politically contentious fishery because, you have the commercial guys pitted against the recreational guys. You have the charter party guys pitted against the surf casters. It's pretty politically charged. I did that for 6 years, and the state senator that I represented retired. So currently, New York does not have a legislative proxy. But I'm kind of done with the sitting behind the table stuff. I do a lot of writing now to try to, explain certain issues, because you look at a lot of the internet chatter on Facebook or whatever, and people just are so wrong about things that I feel like it's a duty to clarify, how decisions are made and why they're made, and what we should be working for, rather than just trying to say we're getting screwed and we need to be able to kill more fish, etc. And I also think, there's always various threats against recreational fishing, from the ENGO community, as well as, I just, what it all boils down to is I hate those days in the water where there's no fish around and I feel absolutely helpless. And I would like to minimize those days. And I feel like being part of the decision-making process helps that in a way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're taking control of your destiny, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The destiny
sort
of
of.
the water.
Yeah.
I get what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Anyway, it's a thankless, sitting on the council and the commission. There's always one group of people that really hates you, man. And they'll go after you online and say shit about your family. It
That's
sucks,
horrible.
but yeah, no, totally.
Well, I appreciate you standing up for all of us recreational guys out there trying to get on these fish and not have those
Thanks.
days where we're not touching anything on the water,
Yeah.
Cap, thank you so much for your time today. Really
Sure, bud.
appreciate it.
Anytime.
I hope I see you out there. I'm gonna try to get out there this next season up on my buddy's boat. Maybe at the AP I'll run into you and I'll give you a shout on the radio.
Yeah, man. Hit me up.
All right. Thanks, Cap.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks for joining us on the Science of Fishing. We hope that this was helpful and you learned something for the next time you're wetting a line. Follow us on Instagram at Science of Fishing. And make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on future episodes and share this with someone you know. Until next time.